Sheila Weinberg, thanks for joining us again. Good to see you here in the state capitol. What brings you down from the Chicagoland area?
Well, I'm speaking before a women's group about how I started Truth in Accounting and what our work is doing.
You and I have talked over the years, and to remind the viewers, you would say that a lot of the accounting that people should follow and do follow in the private sector, they do not follow in government, the public sector. What does that mean, and what impact does that have on the taxpayers?
Well, we really believe that our democracies are at state are representative forms of governments because our citizens and elected officials are making financial decisions without really knowing the facts. I think Thomas Jefferson once said an informed electorate is a basis of a sound democracy. And we have a situation where our electorate is misinformed, and that has created huge debt at the federal level, huge debt at state and local government level. And it also has created, I believe, a lot of cynicism, and our governments are being adversely affected by this.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, from what I hear, there is a lot of cynicism, and we just have this drumbeat of, Illinois isn't balancing their budget, they're not paying their pensions, etc. Would you argue that over the years, lawmakers, both in Congress and in the Illinois legislature, have been uninformed themselves about the implications of some of the tax policies that they've approved?
They've been hugely uninformed. They make huge pension decisions in previous years without even knowing how much that adds to our unfunded liability. When they did the early retirement incentive in 2002, unbeknownst to them, 6 months after that bill passed, they finally calculated that one piece of legislation added $2.1 billion to the unfunded pension liability. You would think that would be something they would want to know before they pass legislation instead of afterwards, especially in light of the Illinois' constitutional guarantee of those pensions. Once the governor signs that bill, once he puts his signature on there, hey, and they decide even tomorrow that, oh, well, we can't afford that, tough luck. It's guaranteed now, and you guys are going to have to pay for it. So we really believe it would be great for them to know those financial consequences before they pass legislation instead of long after.
You do an analysis not just of Illinois' books, but you also do all the states, and you come out with a 50 state. You also look at the federal government and how that is spending our money?
Yeah, so we in 2009 started doing the financial state of the states, looking at all of the 50 states' financial condition. The reason we found that necessary is because back then the state and local governments were required to not report their pension liability on the face of their balance sheets, and they were not required to put their retiree health care liabilities on their balance sheets. So again, we're like, well, hold it, that means elected officials and the citizens do not know the true financial condition of their government, yet they're making huge financial decisions without that knowledge.
Have you found over the years that you've been doing this that are you making any headway, or are all of us, I mean, we've reported with you, we've tried to cover things, is it creeping into the mindset of the general population, the economic problems that we face?
Yeah, we have had a couple of very large successes. One of them we have something we call Morning Call, which our research director puts out on a daily basis. It's a summary of all state, federal, and local government budgeting and accounting stories. And I say when Truth in Accounting started in 2002, we couldn't have put that together because nobody reported on state, local, or federal budgeting and accounting stories. There were very few of those, but now we can do that on a daily basis. Even more importantly is that we had a success with the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, which now requires states and local governments to put their pension liability on the face of their balance sheets. And as financial statements are coming out now, like Illinois' June 2018 financial statement should be released any day now, they are now going to be required to put their retiree health care liability finally on their balance sheet.
Do you go out and talk to individual lawmakers about these issues? And if you do, to what extent, what kind of response do you get?
We do go talk to some state reps and local officials. We do, in addition to doing the financial state of the states, we do a financial state of the cities, 75 most populated cities. We do have some state and local governments that actually are running what we call taxpayer surpluses. They actually have extra money. And those people seem to be more willing to talk to us when we're presenting good news. We do have a problem with the ones that we're reporting bad news have a tendency not to want to talk to us that much.
Before I forget to ask you, what's your website? Because people can watch our videos from around the country and so they may want to see what their state ranks, whether they're from Alabama, California, or North Dakota.
Well, our home website is truthin, that's IN, accounting.org. And from there you can also link to our statedatalab.org. And the State Data Lab is where we have the depository for all of our state reports, all of our city reports. And you've done a great video for us on our State Data Lab, which allows you to go in and compare your state to other states or compare your cities to other cities, and online on demand create charts that do comparisons of demographic, economic, and financial data for more than 300 data points.
Yeah, that really is a very good website, and I would recommend it to reporters out there as well. So who's doing it right? Do we have any cities doing it right? We always hear about the disasters, Illinois being one. Who's managing their public dollars the way they should be managed?
We do have 7 states that are ahead of the game, and I can't remember how many cities we have, but we have cities that are ahead of the game. The best example is probably Utah, and they actually are running a taxpayer surplus, and I did have the fortune of going to present what we call the Truth in Accounting Award to the budget director of the state of Utah. And I asked her, I said, well, what are you guys doing right here that other states, are not quite getting good results? And she facetiously said, well, we do something very weird here. We only promise the services and benefits that we can afford.
There's a shocker. Now, I believe very soon you're going to be coming out with a report on the federal government, are you?
Yeah, we're releasing on April 11th, Thursday, April 11th, a financial state of the union. So the federal government just released the financial report of the federal government, and we went ahead and calculated the financial state of the union, calculating the true debt of the government, and calculating a per taxpayer burden.
Do you take a look at the entitlement programs when you take a look at that?
Yeah, we go ahead and take, again, the reason that we had to do the federal government is because the federal government on their balance sheet, believe it or not, do not report Social Security and Medicare as a liability of the federal government. We were shocked when we went to testify before the Federal Government Accounting Standards Board. They have their own board. They don't live up to the rules of corporations, so they've created their own board. And we were shocked when we were testifying there, and the gentleman right before us was Steve Goss, the Chief Actuary of Social Security, who in essence said, no, the federal government should not book Social Security and Medicare unfunded promises as a liability because the federal government owes nobody any Social Security or Medicare benefits beyond the checks that are currently written.
I will say that if a private business or a private individual went for a bank loan and did their books like that, they would be convicted of bank fraud for hiding their liabilities, and yet the government does it consistently.
Yeah, and the government, at the federal government, they're not recording their pension and their Social Security and Medicare, and at the state and local level they do cash-based accounting to calculate their budgets. The IRS does not allow a corporation that makes more than $20 million to do their books on a cash basis, but that is how state and local governments do their budgets. And they do that because they're very short-sighted and they fit into the election cycle.
And for those who don't know, what does a cash basis mean?
Cash basis would just mean checkbook accounting. So for example, here in Illinois, the state constitution says that your funds available should equal your expenditures. Well, that means that whatever money goes into your checkbook is recorded as revenue, and whatever money comes out is recorded as expenses. And they can balance their budget by doing things like, if you go ahead and you borrow money, that becomes funds available. So they can balance their budget by recording loan proceeds as revenue. And notice it said only expenditures. In accounting, we call it expenses. Well, they're saying expenditures because they only want to include the checks that they have written. Well, here in Illinois, we have billions, sometimes tens to $20 billion of unpaid bills. Well, those are checks, they were costs that were incurred, but because the checks weren't written, they didn't have to include them in the balanced budget calculations.
And we saw that under Governor Rauner, the unpaid balance of bills went up over $16.5 billion. I think it's around $8 billion or so in that neighborhood right now. Well, Sheila Weinberg, we'll put up the website. You do incredible work.
Thank you.
And we appreciate you visiting with us again.
Yeah, if you can put up our truthinaccounting.org and our statedatalab.org, we would very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Leaving from
Our officers.
Jeff Berkowitz, thanks for joining us on the Illinois Channel. We're going to take a bit of an in-depth look at the run for the mayor of Chicago.
The Illinois Channel, keeping you connected to your state, your issues, your home.